We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For your chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2 or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's 1 o'clock on Sunday, the 27th of October. Hope you're having a wonderful Sunday lunchtime out there. This is the weekend on GB News. Now, trick or treat, the Halloween budget approaches as the Chancellor assures the British public it will match the greatest economic moments in Labour's history. Is this confidence or arrogance, dare we say it, from Rachel Reeves, though? And a princely olive branch. The Prince of Wales has name-checked his brother Harry for the first time in 6 years as he pays an emotional tribute to their mum. Could this spell the end of that feud and the start of a better relationship between the two boys? And can somebody please tell Gen Z how to order a pint? I can't believe I'm saying this. Pubs up and down the country are putting up signs instructing customers not to queue up and wait in line like that at the post office, with young punters being the main offenders. I'll be joined by a publican to explain how to buy a pint. I've been managing it quite well for a long time, to be honest with you. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is The Weekend. So firstly, thank you very much for joining me. I hope you had a wonderful weekend and a lovely, peaceful Sunday. But remember, this show, The Weekend, is all about you and your views. So it's really easy to join our conversation or have a chat about whatever you want. It's your show. Just join in by simply visiting gbnews.com/your say, and we'll have a chat, shall we? Keeping me company on today's show. Wonderful panel for you. Author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner and broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon. Thank you very much for joining me, ladies. But before we get stuck into today's stories, let's get the news with another gorgeous lady, Sophia Wensler.
Dawn, thank you. Good afternoon. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom. It's just gone 1 o'clock. The Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, has failed to clarify what Labour mean by working people, while thousands of businesses are closing their doors due to fears about Labour's upcoming budget. The Telegraph newspaper is reporting that more than 1,600 company directors have chosen to wind down their businesses so far this month, the highest number of closures this year and more than double the amount for the whole of last October. It comes as Sir Keir Starmer denied plotting a war against Middle Britain and misleading the public after promising not to raise taxes on working people in the run-up to the general election. Speaking earlier on GB News, Bridget Phillipson avoided questions around whether people running small firms are working people, as she provided further confusion over the party's tax pledges.
I appreciate that it's frustrating that I can't comment on wider measures in the budget, but we haven't got long to wait. The Chancellor will set out everything on Wednesday. What our manifesto was clear about was that we didn't want working people to face higher taxes. We hold to that, and they will not see increases in VAT, in national insurance or in income tax. And coming out of the budget, when they receive their payslip, they will not see higher taxes.
The US has said Israel's strike on Iran should be the end of direct conflict between the two countries. Speaking after yesterday's attacks, the White House said Israel was acting in self-defense, but admits they are fully prepared to defend Israel should Iran choose to respond. It comes as Iran's president has warned against further attacks on his country. Back in the UK, a man has been charged with attempted murder after a woman and 2 children suffered stab wounds in a truly shocking incident. Police were called to Dagenham, where they found a woman in her 30s, an 8-year-old girl and a 2-year-old boy, all suffering from stab wounds. The Met Police said they were taken to hospital and none are in a life-threatening condition. 48-year-old Kulvinder Ram will appear in court on Monday, charged with 3 counts of attempted murder. Police said those involved were all known to each other. Some breaking news now. A man has died after a boat carrying migrants deflated in the English Channel this morning. That's according to French authorities. It comes after GB News revealed the number of Channel migrants arriving in the UK so far this year has already overtaken the total for the whole of 2023. That total figure for the whole of 2023 was 29,437. It comes as reckless people smuggling operations have already resulted in nearly 50 deaths this year. Prince William has extended what is being called an olive branch to Prince Harry by publicly naming him for the first time in 6 years.
My mother took me to the Passage. She took Harry and I both there. I must have been about 11, I think, probably at the time, maybe 10. I'd never been to anything like that before, and I was a bit anxious as to what to expect.
That's part of a new ITV documentary following the Prince of Wales and the first year of his Homewards programme that aims to end homelessness. The film, titled Prince William, We Can End Homelessness, includes poignant unseen photos of William and Diana at the Passage in Westminster. To the US now, where Michelle Obama has used her first appearance on the campaign trail alongside Vice President Kamala Harris to attack Donald Trump. The former First Lady urged Americans to cast their votes to protect the country from the dangers of Donald Trump. Speaking to a crowd of thousands, Obama focused on a genuine fear of how a Trump administration could impact abortion rights.
I want to think about who do you think possibly would care more about our reproductive health. And we are more than just baby-making vessels. You get to choose. You get to use your judgment and cast your vote for yourself and the women in your life. Remember, women, standing up for what is best for us.
Meanwhile, Trump has been speaking at a rally in Pennsylvania. The presidential candidate says he doesn't need Beyoncé to win.
And we don't have Beyoncé, who couldn't fill the arena last night. But the people went there because they thought they were going to hear Beyoncé sing, right? Beyoncé got out and said, "Hello, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to endorse her." What's her name? What's her name? We're leading, but we got to close it out, right? We got to close it out. I will promise you we're going to end inflation very quickly. We're going to get those prices down, too. And I'll stop the invasion of criminals pouring into our country. They're criminals, and they're pouring in like we've never seen. We're going to stop it. We're going to get them the hell out of here. And I will bring back the American dream.
Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Dawn.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sophia. OK, let's get straight into today's stories, shall we? Lots to get through, packed show. You don't want to be moving anywhere, but if you have to move away from your telly, remember that we are on the radio and you can listen to us as you're moving about, maybe doing some housework. It's a Sunday, I know what it's like. Now, Rachel Reeves has promised £1.4 billion to rebuild crumbling schools and triple funding for free breakfast clubs ahead of Wednesday's budget from hell. I mean, come on, it really does feel like it needs pumpkins and bats flying around it, doesn't it? This comes as reports suggest one of the Chancellor's many cuts will be to the £2 bus caps, leaving rural communities at risk of losing vital bus routes. Whilst many fear a trick in this Halloween budget, Reeves has assured the public they are in for a treat, saying she will match the greatest economic moments in Labour history. I think she's somehow comparing herself to Clement Attlee somewhere along the line. But joining me now is Associate Comment Editor at The Telegraph, Mutaz Ahmed. And Mutaz, thank you very much for joining me, as well as my lovely panel. You met them earlier, Amy Nicole Turner and Claire Muldoon. Thank you very much. You are slightly outnumbered. Sorry about that. And we are talking about our first female Chancellor.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, it is the budget from hell. I know it's the day before Halloween, but we'll all be waking up with that Halloween hangover, won't we, on the day itself? She's saying she is comparing herself to Clement Attlee. She's saying her budget will match the greatest economic moments in Labour history. What do you make of that statement?
Well, first of all, you're not the only person who thinks it will be the budget from hell.
No, there's a lot of it about.
Well, some 70% of people are pessimistic about this. And that's part of what makes this so extraordinary, right? The majority of people think she should focus on tax cuts, and she's not going to do that. So there's a lot of sort of pessimism around. No one's even bothering to look for, to think about which bunny she's going to pull out of the hat. It is just extraordinary. When it comes to Clement Attlee, I mean, the thing that people forget about Clement Attlee was he was more sensible than people like Rachel Reeves might think, in that he pulled together strings that were left behind after the war. What she's planning to do is make it much harder for businesses to operate in this country, make it harder for businesses to employ people, make Britain less competitive, raise the cost of borrowing. Clement Attlee did things that it can be argued helped Britain recover after the war. She seems to be doing her best to sort of dampen down our economy.
The 2024 manifesto contained 142 pages. 2 of them were blank, probably written in visible ink, because it seems to me, and I'm not an economist, but I'm not entirely sure Rachel Reeves is after some of the stories we've had around, it does seem to me that some of the stuff they were saying in the budget wasn't strictly true. It was at best Weasley words.
Right.
At worst, a downright lie. I mean, the national insurance. We are not touching national insurance.
Yeah.
Unless you're an employer.
Yeah.
Bit sneaky.
Very sneaky, very sneaky. And we're not raising taxes on working people. Well, it seems working people who have invested in some sort of property or an asset are no longer working people, even though they might work.
Yes.
Right? The other thing is the stealth taxes, right? We're expecting her to keep thresholds where they are for income tax, which means many more people are going to be dragged into the high rate of income tax without actually doing anything because of inflation. There's a lot of sort of Weasley weaving around to sort of pinch people from their back pocket, and people are noticing.
I mean, they did warn us that it was going to be tough, didn't they? It wasn't, Tony Blair, things can only get better, it was things are going to get worse, basically. I mean, but this is a very old Treasury technique, isn't it? to sneak bad stuff out, to see how it goes down with the public. Spoiler, not well. And then when the budget is announced, you think, right, OK, we won't do that, we'll do that, and everyone will love us. Do you think that might be what's going on here?
The interesting thing about the national insurance rise for employers, that was rumoured a while ago, and then people thought, actually, maybe it's just about pension contributions, so it's not as bad. And now it turns out it is actually as bad as we originally thought. So if they're doing that, you know, get the bad stuff out early, they're not doing it very well.
And many of the stuff, I mean, you know, the freeze on the income tax thresholds, which had dragged many medium earners.
Yeah.
Certainly lots of police officers I was reading about today being dragged into paying more tax.
Yeah.
When that was suggested by the Conservative Party, Rachel Reeves' exact words were, this is picking the pockets of working people.
Yes.
Now she thinks it's fine to do it.
Because now working people aren't working people. Working people is, as Norman Lamont said in Telegraph recently, working people now seems to be working class people. And there's a sort of class war element to it now. If you're a working person and you invest, you're not working anymore.
Have you seen, I mean, you're an expert on these things, have you seen anything like it from any other government with a budget like this? I mean, it just seems like it's just horror show, literally a horror show.
Yeah, I mean, it's the unfortunate thing for them is the markets don't really trust Labour. They still don't trust Labour. So they are boxed in more than she's boxed in more than a Tory chancellor.
Yes, true, yeah.
But there's a reason for that, which is in the past, Labour spending has gotten out of control and they borrow too much. But she doesn't help herself by sort of stating something and then trying to find a way to get out of it. We see it again and again. Working people, national insurance, they state something and then they try to find a way to get out of it, and that doesn't help trust. And economics relies on trust as well.
Just don't paint yourself into that corner in the first place.
Exactly.
Right, let's bring the panel in. Amy, are you a working person? Are you going to be protected by Rachel Reeves' budget? Or are you doomed like the rest of us?
Yeah, after this week, it does seem quite hard to keep track of who is working and who isn't. It feels like if you work and you save up so that you can invest in anything, you're no longer working, even though that money was raised by working. But I think they are just terrified of having anything that is going to spook the markets. They don't want another Liz Truss incident. They don't want to have any unfunded commitments. So they're tinkering around the edges, and it's coming out with these headlines that just don't seem to really make any oomph at all. So I think a lot of people are critical that there hasn't been anything in terms of hinting at a wealth tax. We know we have 117 billionaires. You could just tax just the interest.
Most of them have left the country already.
Well, that's the fear. That's a fear. There's a fear they'll leave the country, or in every circumstance, it seems that they don't have the conviction that perhaps Clement Attlee had to do anything big. So the caution around that is preventing them from doing anything at all.
Well, it's to do anything that they think is actually good. Because you get the sense that they don't actually want to do this. You know, all the announcements, it's done with a sort of sorrow. You know, we have to do this. Other chancellors wanted to do something because they thought it was good for the country. These guys are doing lots of really bad things because, you know, we're expected to believe they have to. That's not how it works. And when it comes to the markets, she is putting a lot of work into calming the markets. The irony is they are really jittery about this £50 billion they put aside.
Well, we read today thousands of businesses are closing ahead of the budget.
Exactly. And she might yet spook the markets on Wednesday.
OK.
We don't know for sure that she will.
We don't. I mean, we are speculating. Let's bring Claire into this one now. Claire, what do you make of it? I mean, obviously, we have been warned, as well as working people. The other phrase that gets trotted out is the black hole that everyone knew about, apart from Rachel Reeves.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here from the government that's run by the son of a toolmaker, let's not forget. So we can quite... Yeah, didn't you know that? Did you just forget that there?
Was his mum or something?
So we've had all this two-tier policing, two-tier care, and even when he spoke or she spoke about the budgets, it was the public sector budgets that were going to be OK, but the private sector pensions were going to be hit with any taxation or any more fiscal drag in terms of income for, you know, the middle block. We heard Starmer yesterday in Samoa give his address. He was going to fix the foundations, everybody. He was going to build the country, and from that he was going to make the change. Well, I'm sorry, but there's nothing, I don't think, that they could have done that would actually appease the buyer's remorse that people must have had for this over 100 days of this Labour omnishambles.
It might sound like we are getting very, very anti-Labour here, but we are all working people.
They had 14 years in opposition to change the things they didn't want to do.
That's such a good point, because some of the things they were highly critical of was things like the fiscal drag, the stealth tax. They were directly pinpointing the last government and saying this needs to change, and now that's one of the things that they're expected to keep. So it doesn't make sense.
They are keeping it. Well, they, as far as we're aware,
because they've
extended it by 2 years
to 2028.
But that's my point. So the things that we were expecting, that we were hopeful would just be a given, that they would adapt, they would change, don't seem to be coming to fruition. So they're not delivering on what we voted them in for.
The one thing I want to ask you, Muttis, I mean, sort of like in Rachel Reeves' defence, the black hole does exist, and we all knew about it, but there is neither the Conservative nor the Labour Party's budgets balanced out. We were warned by that by the Office of Budget Responsibility and the Institute of Fiscal Studies before the election. We were warned the budgets weren't working. So money has to be raised from somewhere.
Yes.
So where does she get the money from?
Well, the Tory plan was to raise the money by cutting welfare spending. You know, you reform things like disability benefits, and you get more people into work, and you solve the economic inactivity problem. You sort of restrain the unions and you don't give them massive pay rises. Labour have clearly decided they're not really going to reform welfare too much. There's not much, we're not hearing much about getting people back into work, by the way, which is one of the biggest issues our economy has. And they've decided to give the unions basically all they've demanded. You know, junior doctors get massive pay rises. So they've sort of created, you know, there was a plan there for them to fill this black hole. They've discarded it, and there's not much there to replace that now.
What would be an option for her? What options does she have left to raise money?
Essentially raise tax.
There are things. There are things like closing inheritance tax loopholes.
That's essentially it's not really a loophole that people who have agricultural land don't pay inheritance.
But most of them don't have agricultural land, do they? They pretend they do. They make it appear that their money's in agricultural land to avoid paying the income tax, to avoid paying the inheritance tax.
I mean, that's.
But it is quite a big amount of money. It's a surprisingly large amount. It goes into the billions.
It goes into the billions. Inheritance tax is a drop in the ocean.
It's 3% of the population that it affects.
But it's still quite a large amount of money.
And remember, by the way, the people who pay inheritance tax are not the super rich, because the super rich have extraordinary tax planners. But essentially, the only thing left is to raise tax on wealth. So things like capital gains tax, things like inheritance tax. And, you know, they justify it to themselves by saying that these people have more money. But actually, ultimately, it impacts working people.
So what impact would
well.
she have when she tries to redistribute the debt that she calls? I think she's just going to move money around and call it something else. Do you think that's what's going to happen?
Well, we're already seeing sort of, you know, the £50 billion I mentioned. That's going to have an impact on the cost of government borrowing. So it could raise interest rates, and we could end up feeling that in our mortgages.
And what have the Bank of England said?
They haven't actually said anything yet, have they? I mean, I think they've probably left the country as well.
But if she spends all that, she's not going to be able to spend all that 50 billion, because that will scare the markets.
We'll go back to a Liz Truss.
We'll go back to a Liz Truss situation. Yeah.
Oh, lordy. Mutta, thank you very much for coming in. I'd like to say you've cheered us up, but I'd be lying. And there's quite a bit of that about. Thank you very much for coming in and talking. But what do you think? What do you want to happen? How are you feeling about the budgets on Wednesday? gbnews.com/your say. Join in. And for all the best analysis and opinion on that story, please do go to our website, which is at gbnews.com. Now, I'm Dawn Neeson. You might have spotted. This is GB News, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. Yes, a royal rundown. King Charles is set to return to a full overseas programme next year. And Prince William has reached out, well, possibly, in a new documentary to his baby brother. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Put the kettle on, we'll see you soon.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Catherine Richards and Jake Singleton-Hill featured on the reality show Love is Blind.
Well, Catherine and Jake are joining us now in the studio for Saturday Morning Live. Thank you very much for joining us. And this is perhaps not the end result that people might have thought that they'd be seeing at this point, because you were both on the show, but you didn't fall in love in the pods, did you?
No, we didn't. I rejected him.
You guys look great together.
Yeah.
Very happy as well. It seemed like you guys were really strong, and it almost seemed like Freddie, after he admitted to you that he'd cheated in the past...
I actually respected the fact that he told me up front. I didn't even want to have that conversation, obviously. That was a conversation that we got told to talk about. And I respected his decision, but I think he felt that I was holding this grudge towards him that she really doesn't like, and which was not, and he knew this, because off camera we had many conversations where I was like, thank you for owning up, like, we can just move on from this. But if anything, I think he just felt guilty the whole entire time, and he put that on me, which is fine, but yeah, there's obviously a lot that people don't see.
So for viewers who don't know, Love is Blind is where you go and seek love and romance, but you don't see who you're speaking to, right?
No.
So, Jake, why did you go on the show?
My parents actually met in a very similar way. So my stepdad was texting my mum. He'd basically stolen the number off of a friend because the friend had met my mum in Blackpool, and they were texting for like 6 months. They'd never met. So that premise of how they got together and the marriage that they had was stunning. And to build a relationship not based on looks before you met, I just found that just incredible.
So do you believe in that concept? Is it lust or love at first sight?
It's weird.
It's a bit of both.
I think, it's definitely a bit of both. And I would say, as you get older, your looks will change, but your personality will stay the same.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Hope you're having a wonderful Sunday out there. Now, Buckingham Palace has announced the King will resume a full programme of overseas trips next year, following his successful tour of Australia and Samoa, also suggesting a boost in his recovery from cancer. I mean, the treatment he's been having must have been exhausting, mustn't it? The news comes as the Prince of Wales has extended, now we're calling it an olive branch, it might not be, OK, some of you are moaning already, to Harry, publicly naming him for the first time in 6 years. Let's talk to my royal commentator on this one, Richard Fitzwilliams. Richard, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Now, Richard, we are describing this... It's a documentary about homelessness, isn't it? And about what Princess Diana did at the time. And he mentions Harry. Now, is this an unavoidable, well, I've got to mention my brother, he was there, or is it an olive branch?
Well, the point is we simply don't know. It's significant that he has mentioned Harry. It goes back to Diana taking him to the passage, as you mentioned, and William was taken there in 1993, and it made a tremendous impression upon him. But he hasn't mentioned Harry in any speech or any comment, apparently, since 2018. So let us see where this develops. That's all I can say at the moment, because as we know, there's a very, very deep rift between the two brothers, and The Spare has only just been published in paperback.
He didn't update it, though, did he? To be fair, that was seen as another olive branch, the fact that, you know, the paperback is normally updated, and Harry didn't do that, and he could have covered a lot more in a paperback edition, couldn't he?
Well, he threatened to. I mean, if you go back to January of last year, he talked about removing 400 pages from Spare because it was too sensitive, and that was seen as a threat. And yes, it would normally be expected. There would be some elaboration, and of course, he didn't, and also he didn't give any interviews promoting it. I would say, thank goodness. Also, it would have been absolutely appalling if he had, because with two members of the royal family battling cancer, and the situation as difficult as it is with the royal family anyway, the whole thing, the whole memoir, in my opinion, was misconceived. It was a bestseller, there's no question about that, but there's no doubt also that it was not good judgment on Harry's part for a variety of reasons.
Richard, how do you think Harry will feel about this documentary? It's called Prince William, We Can End Homelessness, and it does include very poignant unseen photos of William and Diana. How do you think Harry will feel about being mentioned in it and being part of, you know, those very happy memories for the boys?
Well, yes, it does, but it comes back to a point I've always made, that since they stepped down as senior working royals, to my knowledge, the Sussexes have never said anything that is positive about the royal family, about the Commonwealth, about their experiences. We know they were difficult as senior working royals, so what, if any, reaction Harry may have, and whether we would know, it's too early to tell.
OK, well, let's talk about some good news for the royal family, shall we? Charles and Camilla have come back from, frankly, what must have been an exhausting... Don't all nag me about, they just shook some hands. A frankly exhausting tour of Australia and Samoa. It's a long way to go, especially when you are in recovery from cancer. And now we learn King Charles is planning a full programme of overseas tours next year. This is following a vote of confidence from his doctors. What do you read into that?
Well, this is a very positive step, and also it's a very signal success for a very, very courageous monarch. This was a 30,000-mile tour over some 11 days, and there's no doubt evening engagements were removed from the schedule. New Zealand couldn't be included, and there were balances such as a rest day, but there's absolutely no doubt, apparently, that he thrived on it, that he was enthused by the welcome he got in Australia, and there's no doubt at all that in his speeches, addressing difficult issues with sensitivity, but also the enthusiasm of the crowds and the fact that Australia seems pretty certain to remain a monarchy, especially since the constitutional aspects of it very, very difficult for Republicans to win that. So I think for a whole variety of reasons, his meet and greets, what we used to call a walkabout, certainly very enthusiastic, but the whole optics of the trip to Australia, to Samoa, and to the Commonwealth Heads of Government Conference, they were all tremendously positive. It's just a pity that an occasional protester got so many headlines. It's the way of the world at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, let's concentrate on the positive. Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliam, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. OK, Amy and Claire are here, poised to talk about the royals. OK, Amy, it's good news, isn't it? I mean, you know, hopefully the brothers may be, you know, doing the olive branch thing. Stop looking at me like that. And obviously King Charles is, well, sounds like he's returning to full health.
It is good news all round for the
You're
royals.
almost choking on it, Amy, though.
No. Do you know what? I learnt something today, which I think is extraordinary, that King Charles, has done 464 engagements since his cancer diagnosis. 464. And people say that he doesn't do much work. I think he does do a lot of... He's a working person, isn't he?
Oh,
he would hate
is a working person,
It's just, does he get paid a little bit too much for his work? That's the question.
45 million, was it?
So he's just got a pay rise. A 45 million pound pay rise, additional to sovereign grant, because the Crown Estate is making so much profits from doing things like renting out the seabed. Now, we have a king that owns the seabed. It just seems a little bit insane.
It's a bit weird. I'll give you that one. It is a bit weird.
But full respect to him. 464 engagements under his belt, despite a cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, absolutely. And cancer treatment is gruelling, and we know, and I wouldn't have fancied doing that very long flight.
No, but I mean, the reality is he's got his wife by him, Queen Camilla, and I think he really had to do it. He had to go out to Southeast Asia and Australia, etc., and Samoa, and he had to lead this Commonwealth. I think there was 48 heads of countries there.
Yes.
And he really had to discuss it and be with it and be the top be the head of it and let it go, because there was an awful lot of rhetoric given in his trip to Australia. There was quite a few protesters as well. One very voluble denial of his existence of the head of the Commonwealth and the fact that Australia should in fact be a republic. Well, when I was there for 4 weeks in April of this year, I didn't encounter anyone that wanted that to change. I thought they were all very happy with the setup. They were all incredibly, I mean, it's a wonderful country. I didn't think I would love it as much as I did, but I really did. And I think it's good news. And I think for him now to have come back and to release the statement that going forward into 2025, he will make more overseas journeys, well, you know, doff cap, good on you, go and do it.
Absolutely. And going back to the brothers again, William and Harry, I mean, obviously this documentary about homelessness, Prince William, We Can End Homelessness, is obviously vowed to end to do away with homelessness completely, which I'm not sure is achievable. Do you think someone as privileged as William putting out a film like this will actually help homelessness?
Well, yeah, I'm into numbers today. So talked about King Charles's engagements.
Do you want to be the Chancellor?
When I was thinking about homelessness, I thought I'd look up how many rooms is in Buckingham Palace. 775 rooms in Buckingham Palace. And there is something quite detached about a prince coming up with a statement, we can end homelessness. But he is right. With systemic changes, we can end homelessness, because one person that is ending homelessness is Andy Burnham, who is currently putting into action this Housing First initiative, which has been advocated by Lord Bird, who founded The Big Issue. He's lived homelessness, he's worked homelessness, he knows the subject inside out. And the idea is housing first, regardless of any other circumstances. So quite often what you'll find at the moment is somebody who needs accommodation, who's living on the streets, will have a substance issue. And that's why they can't get into the hostels, or they'll have something, some additional need.
Very quickly, we are.
That's another narrative, though. Homelessness isn't just about addiction, people living on the streets. There are families that are made homeless because of evictions from landlords, and also the knock-on effect of people not being able to have their fundamental right of shelter.
Well, that's what I mean. That's why we housing first. So that's how you end homelessness. We did it during COVID, and we can do it again. So Prince William's right. We can end homelessness.
OK, ladies, you are staying with me, so plenty of time to chit-chat. But first we have to go to Sophia Wensler, who has the news headlines for you.
Dawn, thank you. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom. The Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, has failed to clarify what Labour mean by working people. Meanwhile, thousands of businesses are closing their doors due to fears about Labour's upcoming budget. The Telegraph newspaper is reporting that more than 1,600 company directors have chosen to wind down their businesses so far this month, the highest number of closures this year and more than double the amount for the whole of last October. It comes as Sir Keir Starmer denied plotting a war against Middle Britain and misleading the public after promising not to raise taxes on working people in the run-up to the general election. Speaking earlier on GB News, Bridget Phillipson avoided questions around whether people running small firms are working people, as she provided further confusion over the party's tax pledges.
I appreciate that it's frustrating that I can't comment on wider measures in the budget, but we haven't got long to wait. The Chancellor will set out everything on Wednesday. What our manifesto was clear about was that we didn't want working people to face higher taxes. We hold to that, and they will not see increases in VAT, in national insurance or in income tax. And coming out of the budget, when they receive their payslip, they will not see higher taxes.
Now, a man has died after a boat carrying migrants deflated in the English Channel this morning. That's according to French authorities. It comes after GB News revealed the number of Channel migrants arriving in the UK so far this year has already overtaken the total for 2023. That total figure was 29,437. People smuggling operations have already resulted in nearly 50 deaths alone this year. In other news, a man has been charged with attempted murder after a woman and 2 children suffered stab wounds in what has been described as a truly shocking incident. Police were called to Dagenham, where they found the woman in her 30s, an 8-year-old girl and 2-year-old boy. They're all suffering from stab wounds. The Met Police said they were taken to hospital and none are in a life-threatening condition. 48-year-old Kulvinder Ram will appear in court on Monday, charged with 3 counts of attempted murder. Police said those involved were all known to each other. And Prince William has extended what is being called an olive branch to Prince Harry by publicly naming him for the first time in 6 years.
My mother took me to the passage. She took Harry and I both there. There must have been about 11, I think, probably at the time, maybe 10. I'd never been to anything like that before, and I was a bit anxious as to what to expect.
That's part of a new ITV documentary following the Prince of Wales and the first year of his Homewards programme that aims to end homelessness. The film, titled Prince William, We Can End Homelessness, includes poignant unseen photos of William and Diana at the Passage in Westminster. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Dawn.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Wet and windy across the northwest today, but sunnier spells elsewhere before turning cloudier for all of us on Monday. Having a look at the bigger picture then, we've got a ridge of higher pressure extending across the south of the UK, but another frontal system moving in from the northwest, introducing cloud and outbreaks of rain. So a damp end to the weekend across Northern Ireland and parts of northwest Scotland, with cloud increasing further towards the east. But across much of England and Wales, actually a fine afternoon to come with plenty of autumnal sunshine. Feeling a touch cooler than what we saw on Saturday, but higher still, 14-15 degrees, cooler in the breeze and persistent rain towards the north and west. So as we go through the rest of Sunday evening, cloud and rain will continue to push in across much of Scotland. So a damp end to the weekend here. Cloud and outbreaks of rain persisting across Northern Ireland too. Could be quite heavy at times, especially over the hills as it edges into Cumbria. Further across England and Wales though, the cloud will be increasing but staying largely dry towards the south and east. So as we go through the evening and overnight, all this cloud and rain will gradually continue to sink its way south and eastwards, probably staying driest for the longest towards the far southeast, but it is going to be largely cloudy, so that will help keep the temperatures up, so not as cold as the night just gone, lows 13-14 degrees. But that leads to a dull start on Monday and throughout much of the day, really, with a lot of cloud around, outbreaks of rain and drizzle on and off, may be quite persistent at times across parts of Wales, but there may be some glimmers of sunshine just towards the south. And here we may see highs of up to 17 degrees, especially across parts of London. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Budget Day on GB News on Wednesday. Stay with us all day for the most anxiously anticipated budget in a generation.
Morning through to evening, we'll be here with insight and analysis, crunching the numbers
as we work out the cost to the country and, most importantly, to you.
Because the Chancellor has a bill to pay. The question is,
who's going to pay it? Budget Day all day Wednesday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Hope you're having a lovely Sunday out there. OK, let's return to that highly anticipated budget on Wednesday. As the Telegraph reports, police officers are set to become higher rate taxpayers by the end of the decade. This is the freezing of the income tax, which drags people who are earning fairly average money into paying more tax. This applies to many, many police officers. And with the controversy, I think is the best way of putting it, surrounding the acquittal of Martin Blake, who was found not guilty of murdering Chris Cabot earlier this week. I'm asking if police officers in the UK are being undervalued and underappreciated. Joining me in the studio is former Met police officer Chris Hobbs. Chris, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Really appreciate your time. It's been, I think it's fair to say, one hell of a week for the police force in general.
It has been difficult, without a doubt, and obviously police officers were on tenterhooks, waiting for the result. Fortunately, it was a not guilty, because had it been a guilty verdict, then I shudder to think what the reaction would have been of armed officers and in terms of officers generally. I think morale is already on the floor pretty much. This would have absolutely destroyed it, and I think we would have seen an even bigger exodus of officers out of the job than we're seeing at the moment. So, no doubt about it, policing is in crisis at this moment in time.
I mean, Martin Blake was found not guilty of murder, but the fact that he was named means he now has a price on his head by the gang that Chris Cabot was a member of. Do you think he should have been named?
No, I don't think so. I think that was a serious error by the judge. One that obviously Yvette Cooper is trying to rectify. Possibly his name may have crept out anyway because of Cabot's links and so on and so forth. But this publicity that he's given will mean his life will never be the same again. And he's probably going to have to leave his current role. I'm sure the Met will look after him in terms of finding him a role.
Well, you hope so, because, I mean, one of the complaints you do hear from frontline police officers is that they are thrown under the bus by, you know, whatever force they happen to work for. In this case, it was the Met. They are not looked after by the people running the force. Do you think that's a fair complaint?
I think officers believe that. Yeah. I mean, we've seen it with what we would call bus ticket gate. You know, but that one where the officer again was fortunate to survive with his career intact. And
sorry, can you
what was that one?
That was the one where the bus inspector wanted to see the lady's ticket. And she refused to show it, and the police officer then was called over, got involved. She still refused to show it, so he arrested her. She had a small child with her. And there was a huge hoo-ha over that. Right. She was de-arrested when eventually, but this blew up into a big disciplinary case, court case. It went to court. Yeah. Unfortunately, he again was found not guilty. But the impact it would have on him and all officers that have to go through this process, which can take years. The longest one was an armed police officer. It took 10 years to resolve that particular issue where he had to shoot someone.
But we forget. It's very easy to forget that these are the human beings. They have families. You know, they have children. It's the pressure it puts on their family lives, and especially in this particular case where, you know, Martin Blake and his family now, I mean, are going to have to be looked after properly, well, you hope looked after, for a good many years.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think police officers on the front line, who more or less stay in the front line for their entire careers, will have to witness, perform duty at something like 400 to 500 traumatic incidents in their career, whereas the average person in a lifetime will probably have to cope with 4 or 5. So they're already under tremendous pressure. And this, of course, doesn't help these particular incidents where, as you say, officers are thrown under the bus. And this doesn't help. And officers are voting with their feet.
I just want to read you what Labour MP Kim Johnson said. She says the police have protections while our black communities are over-policed and under-supported. Well, she was asking the Home Secretary for assurances that the black community, whatever that actually is, will be kept safe and that the police, who already have the protections they need, will not be given extra protections. What do you make of what she said?
Yeah, it's a point I've argued many times. It was a point made by Baroness Casey, and I actually wrote a response to Baroness Casey, where I think she misunderstood so many things. One thing that the police are very bad at, and the Met in particular, is what we call comms, communicating with the public.
There's a lot of that about at the moment.
And, of course, as far as the black community are concerned, there is a problem caused by deprivation, etc., etc. There is a problem there in terms of stabbings, possession of weapons. But police are often first on the scene of stabbings and shootings in London, often disproportionately involving black young men. And they will battle to save the lives of those black young men, and frequently do so. And the paramedics acknowledge the skills now police officers have are really quite very, very high indeed. So you get Black Lives Matter, police save black lives, but very rarely do the public actually hear about it. Now, that should balance out some of the criticism that we're hearing, and we heard from Diane Abbott yesterday.
I mean, you have had a long career as a Met police officer. What advice would you give now to people who are maybe thinking of joining the police? Would you say it's not maybe a career that is worth the stress you could potentially get from it?
I would say think very carefully. The way things are at the moment, think very carefully before you want to apply to join, because the challenges are far greater than when I was a young PC. The stresses, the strains, what you're expected to do. And often it comes because training has changed as well. It's a huge shock to young officers complete their training. They go out and they face this torrent of abuse and criticism, mobile phones coming out at every incident. Mind you, I tend to do the same, but more for a good cause than a bad one. But they've got to put up with all this. So, again, I would say to any potential new recruit, think very carefully, go for a ride along with police, which you can now do, and talk to experienced officers who will tell you how it is. And at the moment, it's not good.
It's not good. Chris Hobbs, former Met police officer, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. I'm Dawn Needham, this is GB News, and there's lots more coming up on today's show. Elbows out and eye contact, usually crucial to be served first at the bar. But pub landlords say that because of the pandemic, Gen Z are instead forming an orderly queue. What is wrong with these kids? OK, more on this bizarre phenomenon coming next. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you very soon. You can pour yourself a pint if you remember how. See you soon.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
You know, is the fact that electric blanket sales going up actually a good thing? This means that people are switched on to the problems that the winter might hold, that they might have some defence against it, or is it a real indictment of a Labour government that they aren't going to be able to, you know, support elderly people in their hour of need?
Good morning, by the way.
Morning.
I think the sale of electric blankets may well be because we've had this cold snap because of the Arctic weather coming in from the north. However, I think it's an absolute reality that, as your clip said, that over 800,000 elderly people who are eligible for the winter fuel allowance, who can get pension credits, are struggling to apply. And so what is absolutely essential at the moment is that all of those older people who are eligible for pension credits do apply and do get what's owed to them. The benefits are owed to them. And the average that people will get through pension credits is about £78 a week. So that's definitely going to make a massive difference to people who are really struggling.
What can organisations like yours do to encourage people to, I guess, educate themselves on technology and make that first step into the digital world, which is very intimidating at times?
Absolutely, and that's what we do at Good Things Foundation. So we're a national charity. We work all across the whole of the UK. And in your clip there, you had Links Digital, and they're a member of what we call the National Digital Inclusion Network, which is a network of local charities, small local community organisations, food banks, job centres, old people's clubs. So anyone, any organisation at that local level.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. I hope you're having a wonderful Sunday afternoon. Thank you for joining me. Really appreciate your company. Now, this is the maddest story I think I've ever read. Pubs in the UK are addressing a Gen Z trend of queuing single file to order drinks, you know, in a pub, at a bar. The habit is believed to stem from COVID-19 social distancing, where we all had to do. You can see in the diagram there, OK? The top diagram is how you do not queue in a pub for a pint at the bar. The second one, with the green tick, there's the clue, is how you do it. You spread out along the bar, you talk to the bar staff, you order a pint. It's really not rocket science. But this shift in bar etiquette has prompted a campaign to educate young patrons about traditional bar culture, encouraging them to, as you've seen in the diagram, they need diagrams, to approach the bar directly. So I'm going to talk now to landlord of the Dog at Wingham, Mark Bridgen. Mark, I can't believe I'm looking at a diagram telling people how to order a pint in a pub. What is going on here?
The article made me laugh as well, and I hadn't really thought about it until I read it. But yeah, now I've come to think of it, we do sometimes find, you know, guests arriving and kind of forming a queue rather than we have two bars, and they don't always kind of move around and find the second bar. And you know, the pub in the article, you know, I've been to the Devonshire, and thinking back, I think I even found myself almost in a queue there. So, yeah, I've witnessed it, and we see it at our place. I've found myself in one, so it made me laugh. Yeah, and if there's a campaign to get people at the bar anytime, any reason, I'm behind it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, of course. I mean, we know how many pubs are closing on a daily basis now. Probably not going to be helped in the budget from hell, which we've already mentioned, coming on Wednesday. And, you know, predictions are that pubs will be extinct, and this breaks my heart, by 2074, I think it was, which isn't that long away. But this is a group called Pub Queues, and it's got thousands of supporters online. And it's leading the fight against this trend by calling out infractions and praising establishments challenging that behaviour. And we've got actually pictures of pub signs here, literally with diagrams on how to order a pint. I mean, have you actually had to say to anybody in your pub, look, just spread out along the bar and, you know, you'll get served properly quicker?
I think, yeah, you know, we'd be known to call them round to the other bar. I don't think we've had to stop anyone forming an orderly queue. But yeah, you know, the odd nudge to move round to the other bar and make themselves comfortable and get served quicker. Yeah, it happens. But it's not just youngsters. I think, you know, lots of people's habits are changed. And, yeah, getting them back to the norm has been a very long process.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't be so mean on them. Mark Bridgen, thank you very much, landlord of the Dog and Women. I hope you've got a very good, not a queue, an orderly scrum at the bar ordering pints. Thank you very much for joining us. Right, I've got two very sharp-elbowed ladies here with me, Amy and Claire, who I'm assuming, well, I'm actually assuming, but I know you know how to order a pint. Amy, you know how to go to a bar and order a pint, don't you?
Well, I actually got in trouble for this last year because I went to ice hockey game, and I went up to the bar to order like you do, and they said no, you have to go in a queue. And then I turned, and there was this whole queue glaring at me for seemingly skipping the queue, and it was a bar. I am very passionate about this subject, and I believe you should always be able to elbow your way to the front and do whatever you need to do to get served first.
Well, you know, I'm with you. I mean,
some great memories.
Yeah, exactly. I have very, very great memories with football. I mean, you know, the old school bars at football where you literally, with sharp elbows and...
It's like competitive, isn't it? You get really into it.
It's a competitive sport. Most of the time it's better than the football match. I mean, Claire, you look like a woman that you can get your pint if you put your mind to it.
I can get one sitting from my seat. I've got that vision.
Yeah, she has.
That Wanda vision. But seriously though, in Glasgow growing up, we went to the Horseshoe Bar, and there's great pubs in Glasgow, and it was actually the shape of a horseshoe. So the whole bar was right the way around. But the people that you met, the people you encountered, the eye contact, the banter, it was phenomenal, and you just don't get that now. You know, during COVID, people were ordering from apps.
Oh, God,
it's
I hate
so
that.
sad.
Oh.
I mean, our pubs are lifelines to some people in terms of community spirit, especially in rural areas. Please go to them.
Go to the pub. Not right now. Go to the pub after this show.
After this show, you can go to the pub.
I'm Dawn News from GBNews, and we have got lots more coming up. So you can go to your own fridge, but don't go to the pub. Go to the pub after. See you very soon. Don't go too far.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. First, we'll give you £20,025 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you £5,000 to spend on all of your Christmas presents, with a further £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. You'll get it all in time for the big day. For your chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Budget Day on GB News on Wednesday. Stay with us all day for the most anxiously anticipated budget in a generation.
Morning through to evening, we'll be here with insight
and analysis, crunching the numbers
as we work out the cost to the country, and most importantly, to you.
Because the Chancellor has a bill to pay. The question is...
Who's going to pay it? Budget Day, all day Wednesday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's 2 o'clock on Sunday, the 27th of October. Happy Sunday, hope you're having a lovely weekend out there. This is indeed The Weekend on GB News. Very clever what we did with that title, isn't it? Trick or treat, the Halloween budget approaches as the Chancellor assures the British public it will match the greatest economic moments in Labour history. Is that confidence, or whisper it quietly, arrogance from Rachel Reeves, though? And a princely olive branch, or is it? The Prince of Wales has name-checked his brother Harry for the first time in 6 years as he pays an emotional tribute to their mum. Could this spell the start of a new, better relationship between the two boys? And can somebody please tell Gen Z how to order a pint? Pubs up and down the country are putting up signs instructing customers not to queue up and not to queue and wait in line like they're at the post office. young punters are evidently the worst offenders. We'll be talking more about that one. I'm Dawn Needham, and this is The Weekend. But this show is nothing without you and your views, and lots of you getting in touch already. Certainly when we were talking about the homelessness situation with what Williams' documentary is about, lots of people saying we can actually afford to put all the migrants coming over in the boats up in hotels. Why can't we put our homeless people in hotels? Lots and lots of you saying that. And Frankie says, Dawn, let the Gen Zers queue at the pub, then we can all get served directly ahead of them. They'll soon cop on. We don't want them to though, Frankie, do we, to be honest with you? So this show is nothing, as we've just proved, without you and your views. It's really simple to join our conversation. Just go to gbnews.com/your say and join in. Have a chit-chat. It's a Sunday afternoon. It's what it is about. Keeping me company on today's show, wonderful panel for you, author and broadcaster Amy Nicol-Turner and a broadcaster and a journalist Claire Mulder. Thank you very much, Team Girl, today. But before we get stuck into our stories, let's get these news headlines with another girl, Sophia Wensler.
Dawn, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just gone 2 o'clock. These are your headlines from the GB Newsroom. The Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, has failed to clarify what Labour mean by working people, while thousands of businesses are closing their doors due to the fears about Labour's upcoming budget. The Telegraph newspaper is reporting that more than 1,600 company directors have chosen to wind down their businesses so far this month, the highest number of closures this year and more than double the amount for the whole of last October. It comes as Sir Keir Starmer denied plotting a war against Middle Britain and misleading the public after promising not to raise taxes on working people in the run-up to the general election. Speaking earlier on GB News, Bridget Phillipson avoided questions around whether people running small businesses are working people, as she provided further confusion over the party's tax pledges.
Appreciate that it's frustrating that I can't comment on wider measures in the budget, but we haven't got long to wait. The Chancellor will set out everything on Wednesday. What our manifesto was clear about was that we didn't want working people to face higher taxes. We hold to that, and they will not see increases in VAT, in national insurance or in income tax. And coming out of the budget, when they receive their payslip, they will not see higher taxes.
The US has said Israel's strikes on Iran should be the end of direct conflict between the two countries. Speaking after yesterday's attacks, the White House said Israel was acting in self-defense, but admits they are fully prepared to defend Israel should Iran choose to respond. It comes as Iran's president has warned against further attacks on his country. Meanwhile, at least 35 people have been injured, 6 reportedly seriously, after a truck hit a bus stop in central Israel this morning. Israeli police say the suspected ramming attack north of Tel Aviv is being treated as a possible terror incident. Police have confirmed the driver of the bus was an Israeli citizen. Back in the UK, a man has been charged with attempted murder after a woman and 2 children suffered stab wounds in what has been described by police as a truly shocking incident. Police were called to Dagenham, where they found the woman in her 30s, an 8-year-old girl and a 2-year-old boy, all suffering from stab wounds. The Met Police said they were taken to hospital and none are in a life-threatening condition. 48-year-old Kulvinder Ram will appear in court on Monday, charged with 3 counts of attempted murder. Police said those involved were all known to each other. A man has died after a boat carrying migrants deflated in the English Channel this morning. That's according to French authorities. It comes after GB News revealed the number of Channel migrants arriving in the UK so far this year has already overtaken the total for the whole of 2023. The total figure for small boat migrant arrivals over the whole of 2023 was 29,437. It comes as people smuggling operations have already resulted in nearly 50 deaths this year. Prince William has extended what is being called an olive branch to Prince Harry by publicly naming him for the first time in 6 years.
My mother took me to the Passage. She took Harry and I both there. I must have been about 11, I think, probably at the time, maybe 10. I'd never been to anything like that before, and I was a bit anxious as to what to expect.
That's part of a new ITV documentary following the Prince of Wales and his first year of his Homewards programme that aims to end homelessness. The film, titled Prince William, We Can End Homelessness, includes poignant unseen photos of William and Diana at the Passage in Westminster. To the US now, where Michelle Obama has used her first appearance on the campaign trail alongside Vice President Kamala Harris to attack Donald Trump. The former First Lady urged Americans to cast their votes to protect the country from what she called the dangers of Donald Trump. Speaking to a crowd of thousands, Obama focused on a genuine fear of how a Trump administration could impact abortion rights.
I want to think about who do you think possibly would care more about our reproductive health? And we are more than just baby-making vessels. You get to choose. You get to use your judgment and cast your vote for yourself and the women in your life. Remember, women, standing up for what is best for us.
Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Dawn.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Now, let's get straight into today's stories, shall we? Rachel Reeves, yes, her again, has promised £1.4 billion to rebuild crumbling schools and triple funding for free breakfast clubs ahead of Wednesday's Budget from Hell announcement. This comes as reports suggest one of the Chancellor's many cuts will be to £2 bus caps, leaving rural communities at risk of losing vital bus routes. But they're probably not working people. Why are we worried about them? I'm joking, by the way. Many fear a trick in this Halloween budget. Reeves has assured the public they're in for a treat, saying she will match the greatest economic moments in Labour history. OK, I'm now joined by Chief Political Editor of the Financial Times, Jim Pickard. Jim, thank you very much for joining us today. Rachel Reeves, my budget will match the greatest economic moments in Labour history. What do you make of that?
What we do know is that this is going to be a very big budget. It's going to be an historic moment. Whether or not you like it is, of course, a different question. I noticed you calling it a budget from hell a minute ago. I mean, that's a slightly pejorative phrase. It's not one that I would use. It's definitely not one that Rachel Reeves is going to use. But of course, we've now been softened up for a huge amount of tax rises. We've been softened up for changes in the fiscal rule of the government in order to borrow more only for capital investment, but it's still something that could make the markets a little bit nervous. And therefore, if you think your taxes are going to go up, if you're someone who's quite wealthy, if you're an employer, you could see taxes rise and you may be unhappy. We shouldn't forget the other side of that coin, though, is that if all goes well, there ought to be more money for public services, or at least the government should be able to avoid the pretty deep cuts that have been penciled in by the previous Tory administration and previous Tory Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, which, if there wasn't any fresh money coming in from borrowing or taxes or whatever else, then there was going to be a very tight squeeze on things like councils, health, schools, the services that your viewers use pretty much every day.
Jim, it's a budget from hell because it's Halloween. Come on, let me have some fun. They wouldn't let me have a pumpkin on the desk. Let me have fun with the budget. Now, the 2024 manifesto contained 142 pages, and the pledges were: we're not going to touch national insurance, we're not going to touch income tax, we're not going to touch VAT, which is where pretty much nearly 70% of government revenue comes from. So did they paint themselves into a corner by promising those things? And are they going to have to go back on some of them? I mean, should we be surprised by that?
So I've been on the Prime Minister's somewhat exhausting trip down to Samoa over the last 4 days. I spent 30 hours on the plane each way, and I'm kind of amazed that I'm still functioning, to be honest. But we had the press conference in Samoa at the end of Keir Starmer's trip, and I was the journalist who asked him the question about, in your budget, you, Prime Minister, came up with you said you were going to do a couple of small niche tax rises on private equity, on private schools, and on the oil and gas industry. But you said nothing about the tens of billions of pounds of tax rises we're seeing this week. Did you, Prime Minister, mislead the public? And of course, he said no. But they have not been candid. They were really not very honest about the scale of the tax rises that they were going to do. And yes, by ruling out increases on the main handful of working people taxes, they did box themselves into a difficult position where there aren't that many other taxes they could put up. And therefore, we're seeing them basically bend the rules that they themselves imposed earlier in the summer. They didn't say we're not going to put up any form of. They didn't say we will keep national insurance for employees where it is, and we will put up national insurance for employers. They implied that they weren't going to touch either. And we're about to see the employer next go up in the budget. And likewise, they said they weren't going to put up income tax, period. And we're going to see them pushing forward those frozen thresholds that were introduced by the Conservative government, which is a sleight of hand way of raising more income tax. So they have, I think, in my personal view, broken those rules that they came up with before the budget. And they also stand accused legitimately of just not being candid about the full extent of the tax rises coming down the tracks. Now, they will, of course, say that the last government has left them with this fiscal black hole. Not everyone agrees that that is the whole story.
Yeah, Jim, because you made me feel quite mean now, I'm going to try and be quite nice. Play devil's advocate here. Now, Rachel Reeves, the black hole, right? We know. We were all told by the Office of Budget Responsibility and the Institute for Fiscal Studies that, neither party's budgets added up to solving the problem we have financially. So we were aware there's a problem. Now, she has to get the money from somewhere. We've agreed they painted themselves in a corner. But where would a sensible place for her to get the money from, where would it be?
I mean, the amount of money we're talking about, if they are really going to raise £40 billion and only £5 billion of it is coming from cuts to public, that's £35 billion coming from taxation system. You are going to make people unhappy however you do that. And they're trying to do it in more kind of sleight of hand ways that people don't necessarily notice. But, people are going to notice this budget. When they say it's a historic budget, it's one that people aren't going to forget about in a hurry. And I think the real test of this budget is, they can convince the public possibly that it was all worthwhile if a few years down the line public services genuinely improved and they visibly improved. And if they haven't, then I think people could lose patience with this Labour government relatively quickly. But they probably have a few years in which we get to see whether or not they can deliver on that front.
Jim, thank you very much for joining us. Jim Packard from the Financial Times there, who has done very well considering he has literally got off a long-haul flight and looks very good on it, doesn't he? I have to say. OK, now let's see. Well, I still have the wonderful Amy and Claire with me. Let's see what they make of what they've heard. I'm still going to call it the budget from hell because it is Halloween, Amy. That's fair enough, isn't it?
Well, I don't think it's that unfair because it's essentially what Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer have been calling it.
Yeah, that's
They've been
true.
saying, watch out, this is going to be horrendous, this is going to be a lot of pain. So they're kind of calling it the budget from hell themselves. So it's really no wonder that we're all feeling it might be that way as well. However, I'm going to try and be positive because I think Jim said something important. He talked about tax rises that people potentially don't notice so much. And I think one of those could be a slight increase in capital gains. They've been talking about increasing capital gains basically throughout the whole campaigning season, no tax on working people, which we kind of translated to mean rises in wealth taxes like capital gains tax. Now, only the top 0.5, so half of 1% of people pay capital gains tax. Other governments have raised it. Thatcher's government raised it at one point. So I think maybe things like that could raise revenue quite seamlessly. Just a money tree idea.
Well, in terms of ideas, I don't think it's not as if to say they haven't had time to prepare it. They had 14 years to prepare something. And even when the Conservative Party themselves were internally combusting, Labour just sat back and said absolutely nothing about anything. But going back to this budget that's going to happen on the eve of Halloween, we've now got the Conservatives in turmoil who Rishi Sunak, as the current leader of the Conservative Party, will have to give a response to the budget that's just been, that they don't even know what's going to be in it. I think the Labour Party used to be the party of the working class, people work the clues in the name Labour. I just think they've lost their way. I think the comms from Number 10 at the minute are just as dead in the water. I think they should be saying to us, the electorate, look, we know, as you said, Amy, they did say this will be tough. But really, they should be throwing some element of hope. They should be giving a timeline. They should be more experienced in terms of dealing with the public, knowing what the public temperature is, and actually going for it. And notwithstanding that, we've also got the American elections next week too. What are we going to face if Trump gets in, or worse, if Kamala Harris gets in? I don't know, but we need to know that the country and our country will be led by someone that knows what they're doing and stops flip-flopping their way through.
They know what they want to do, but they don't have.
They haven't even set it out, though.
Actually put it into motion, so that's why they. Because when you talk about
that's not leadership, Amy.
Attlee did well because he showed some leg. He put a lot of money into things, he invested into things, and that's exactly what we were expecting from this government. We expected them to be bold. We expected them to invest where they need to invest to create that growth in the long run. And they just seem to be trimming around the edges.
I just think they're dangerous. I think they're a dangerous mob. I really do.
I mean, there was a small bit of positive news today. The fact that schools were promised $1.4 billion to rebuild schools.
It's not really how it seems, though. It's not.
No, I know it's not. I mean, there are 24,000, nearly 24,500 schools in England. That works out about 57 grand a school, and the Tories are already doing it in any case.
It sounded like a cash injection, but then when you boil it down, it was keeping existing initiatives going rather than paying for new initiatives. So the core funding is essentially the same, and they're going to keep to the same timeline of about 50 schools a year. So it's just a continuation of the last government, which this government were highly, highly critical of.
Oh, yeah, well, they did. I mean, Rachel Reeves herself, on the freeze on income tax threshold, when the Tories were doing it, she said it was picking the pockets of working people. She does love that phrase. But now she's doing it herself.
It absolutely is, though, because that tax threshold, freezing the income tax thresholds, is a sleight of hand because most people don't notice it or recognise it for what it is, which is looping more people into paying tax.
Yeah, including we had a debate about hard-working police officers.
So it's going to be the key workers that are going to find this the most difficult. Working people.
And that personal allowance as well. So you're going to.
They're freezing that at 12 and a half.
Exactly. So more people will pay.
And they'll be dragging more pensioners into it as well.
It's just an absolute.
Why?
Mic drop.
Okay, let's talk about the Conservatives, right? Because I mean, Rishi Sunak will be the one when the budget is announced responding to it. How do you feel about that? Do you think they should have sorted out a new leader, so at least...
Well, they couldn't because of the timeline and all of this.
They can make up rules as they go along.
Well, they think they've made up enough, don't you?
I know.
But no, he will need to stand up. But actually, someone in the front benches with him, Jeremy Hunt, who's quite close to Rishi Sunak, and Rishi Sunak is a finance guy. OK? Yeah. He's not a politician. And it'd be interesting to see how long he actually keeps his seat for. If he's going to call a by-election to get him out so him and his family could possibly relocate to America. But yes, Don, you're right. He is going to be the one, not the shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, Jeremy Hunt, but it'll be Rishi Sunak that will have to stand up and oppose the budget that Rachel Reeves will produce from a witch's hat.
Which will possibly be quite tricky because it's a continuation.
Is that the trick part of Trick or Treat?
Yeah, that's the treat. What's going to be the treat?
Would you have said witch's hat if it had been a man doing it?
Wizard. I mean, we're going to get into semantics.
Yeah.
But yes, I would have.
Yeah.
I would have. But let me just say, I think that the pumpkin might be Michael Fabricant's white toupee.
Oh, yes. No, we can't go to that. But it is frustrating. And businesses are... There was a story today about the amount of businesses closing ahead of the budget, and this was all about growth and change.
But some of these headlines are so easy to navigate away from. Like we were speaking earlier about the £2 bus cap.
Oh, don't start, yeah.
I mean, I think that was due to come to an end in December anyway, but just deviate away from it and keep it going. So it's worth, I think, the same amount of money could be raised by adding a penny to fuel duty. They could get away with that. Adding VAT to private flights. that would easily be accepted. But taking low-cost bus fares is never going to communicate
I think
well.
that's cruel. I really think that is
rural
cruel.
areas, especially for elderly
absolutely cruel.
people.
And key workers that have to navigate, especially in cities in this country, that have to navigate public systems with the bike lanes that are in, the bike lanes that are in now, that displaces all the traffic out, LTNs displaces traffic out, causes road traffic to pile up and pile up. Buses take forever now. It's absolutely horrendous.
It seems at odds with so much messaging. I thought we were supposed to be getting more public transport and not driving our cars as much. I mean, I would have thought more in line with Labour's original values would be universal free buses.
Yeah.
That would get us more to our end goal. How is increasing bus fares in line with any of the
it's not.
campaigning?
It's not.
Is there anything you're optimistic about, Amy? I mean, you are, you know, the lefty,
but
if you like. I mean, you know, Labour are
the Liberal,
your party.
Let's go for the Liberal. It just
Is
think
there
it's been a
anything
lukewarm. Well, like I said, I think some of the ideas around closing those loopholes on inheritance tax, which are obviously need to be done because they just seem so unfair. Increasing capital gains slightly, but I don't feel like they're pulling any of the bigger levers at their disposal.
Do you know what else?
I were expecting them to.
Once they get the revenue in, I don't actually trust them to spend it properly. I really don't. They won't send it to the people that actually need it, to the services that are crying out for it, and indeed I'll include education in that too. What they should be doing is stopping devolution, stopping all the quangos, getting back to basics, helping people, helping families, deal with errant children, and that, through education, that will be helped as well, and discipline. That's what's needed.
They did come in saying they were going to be transparent.
Well, they're not. I don't think they are.
I mean, they were going to be for the working people, whatever that actually is, and we can debate that. I mean, you know, Rachel Reeves admitted on Friday that some working people will face tax rises. I mean, at least she's admitted it now.
It feels quite tokenistic as well because they keep going on about how we need to help schools, how we need to tax private schools.
Patronising.
And then all they come up with is breakfast clubs, which I think most parents aren't even bothered about.
Well, that's
most parents are bothered about affordable childcare, holiday clubs, after-school care. I don't think most parents would even use these breakfast clubs.
Well, let's find out, shall we? I mean, I promise I'm going to read as many messages as I can. So many of you getting in touch, and you are... You're all feeling as nervous as we are about that budget, the Halloween budget from hell. Sorry, I'm going to keep calling it that.
I'm not nervous about it. I just feel like it's not going to do anything. Nothing's really going to change.
Well, I'm feeling skint already. But for all the best analysis and opinion on that story, please do go to our website, gbnews.com. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, and there's loads more coming up on today's absolutely packed show, including a British Beauty Week. Hence my panel, obviously, not me. Find out exactly what that is after this short break.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Following the summer riots and the resurgence of far-right ideologies, the former Education Secretary told peers that reinforcing shared values is now more crucial than ever.
So we're asking this morning, should we teach British values or would it be a step backward?
Or how do you even start? To debate this now, we're joined by the Campaign for Real Education chairman, Chris McGovern, and political commentator Matthew Stadlen.
Well, I think these days, particularly in schools, it's quite fashionable to look at the negative sides of Britain's identity, particularly British history. Personally, I think I'm very proud of being British, and I think we need to be proud of our country like most other countries around the world are.
As Chris says, Matthew, lots of other countries do it. Heck, you only have to look at the United States, don't you, to see how sort of patriotic they are. Is there anything wrong in trying to instil a bit of that amongst our youth?
I'm just worried it sounds a little bit communist, Stephen, being told what it is to be British. I've got my own personal but very vague views of what British values might be: inclusivity, patience, being able to queue, decency, respect for democracy and the rule of law. But I mean, very many people will have different sets of values. Some people are racist. So are British values racist? You talked about the far right. I think we all know what the far right is. It's sort of violent, xenophobic racism. But if you have, say, I don't know, 3-4 million people in this country who might describe themselves as racist or far right, and they're British, or as British as you lot and as I am, does that mean those values get taught in schools? My worry is it's a little bit communist.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson, and thank you for all your messages. Really enjoying your company this afternoon. I just have to read this one out because this is from Grumpy Grandad, one of our regulars. Grumpy, good afternoon. And Amy, that's you, has her moments, but of all the leftists, she makes more sense than the rest of them.
High praise.
Lots of love in the room for Amy today. It has to be
As
said.
there should be.
Most of them are a bit shocked, Amy, but I mean, absolutely. And some are suggesting you might be joining Reform soon. Probably not.
Time will tell.
Now, OK, this is a subject that you might be guessing I'm not too up to date on. Events are being held across the country to mark British beauty in a week to celebrate the contributions the industry makes to the economy. GB News reporter Anna Riley has the story for us.
The beauty industry is a thriving sector. It contributes billions of pounds to the nation's economy, and Yorkshire's set to be put on the map for its input to the sector this British Beauty Week.
We invest so much in terms of our health and beauty, so it's something that even when there's a recession, even when there's a COVID pandemic, things like beauty really matter to people. So on Sunday we have our first ever event in Yorkshire for British Beauty Week, and it's a festival of health, beauty and longevity. Nowadays we're in the era of a lot of misinformation, particularly like with TikTok and social media. So this is an opportunity for women to hear from experts about their experiences and to get advice, and also to be able to, in a free manner, have questions and answers and meet some of these people.
Rita Forshaw is Dr. Lubna's Botox client, and she's one of the 7.7 million Brits to have aesthetic treatment in the last year. She's looking forward to the This Is Yorkshire Beauty event.
My looks are important to me, and I like to look after myself, and I like to feel good. How you feel and how you look is one thing for me. That's why This Is Yorkshire Beauty is so good, because they just get it. They just get it, and it's all relayed in a normal language to normal people, and you don't have to go to London for it.
The Coppergate Clinic in York are experts in plastic surgery, cosmetic surgery and aesthetics. They're giving expert advice at Grantley Hall.
We get patients from every corner of the UK, a lot from Ireland, and we get patients coming from America, Singapore, Australia even. I do think that there is a misconception that you have to go to London to have the best treatment, when there is amazing surgeons all outside of London, not just Yorkshire, but here in particular we've got 9 of some of the best talent in the country. So Sunday, the first session will be about cosmetic tourism, about trends in cosmetics that you see on TikTok and Instagram, like the foxy eye, and how we do not condone those types of procedures, but also the repercussions of all of those treatments.
Dr. Lubna hopes the event will challenge stereotypes and misinformation within the trade, proving that beauty is more than just skin deep. Anna Riley, GB News.
Thank you very much, Anna. We often sneer at this industry, don't we? Because it's seen as sort of like, well, it's not proper industry. It's just for girls, isn't it? But I mean, it brings a lot of money in. I'm going to out my husband now because he had a pedicure the other day and he absolutely really enjoyed it. More and more men are getting involved. British Beauty Week, though, I mean, it's a good thing to celebrate. It's an industry that is bringing money in, so we need to be doing it.
I think it is, but there's a key thing here that we cannot overlook, and that is regulation. There's an awful lot of horror stories about the Brazilian bum lifts, the Botox that can't go wrong, but moreover, lip fillers. And we kind of laugh at Gen Z an awful lot with their inability, to not buy a pint in a pub. But that's the category, that is the market. And they get all their marketing from social media, Snapchat, TikTok. That's where they'll get it all, because of filters. And if you think for 1 minute that any of these filters that girls especially use on their faces to put on for their profile pictures or anything else is natural, then it's not. And I have got a worry that it's actually going to have an expectation that girls will have to be able to, one, look like that, but two, all the time. You know, there is a thing, there is a regime, I'm sure you're part of it, take your make off at night. You know, makeup off at night.
Sometimes?
Well, I know, I'm with you. I've had Botox, but I haven't had it for a while. And I do some other treatments as well. But the rest is actually me, unfortunately. I prefer if some bits weren't actually so much there in your face, but they are. But this whole industry is massive. It's getting bigger. We've got celebrity makeup artist Charlotte Tilbury, to name one. There's so much to unpack, literally, in this, and so much to put on. But you'll find it's not just girls. There's a lot of men in the industry as well. That Tom Ford, you know, men actually want to perhaps, look like him, or they take a lot of interest in their regimes. So a lot of the products that initially were set up for women are actually replicated in the so-called male packaging.
There is also now that pressure that women have put up with for a long time on men to be sort of like, to live up to the Instagram image. And it's in one way it's nice to have equality, but not in that way.
Yeah, and it feels a bit like this whole industry is founded in exploiting insecurities, because how you look doesn't always replicate how you feel at all. And what is motivating people to want to have aesthetics? Is it coming from a healthy place, or is it coming from low self-esteem? Is it coming from needing to compete and from comparing yourself to other people? Is it coming from a place of security or insecurity? And I think more commonly than not, it comes from a place of insecurity. So I'm not sure it's an entirely positive sector.
But it's really
I
important.
understand it generates money and that's good for the economy. But wouldn't women be far better off not feeling pressured to get Botox, not feeling pressured to get
A lot of
lip
the
filler?
treatments, I mean, sort of like defending the industry here, are about mental health, not about looking better, but about mental health, about
making you feel better.
No amount of tweakments is going to improve your mental health. A lot of the times it makes it worse, because you think, if I look a certain way, then I will be happy. Then you have that and you're not happier and you're confused because it hasn't actually improved your self-esteem. So surely we should be raising up women's self-esteem so they don't feel as pressured to look a certain way.
I just think the relaxing element of the beauty industry.
But that's like spa treatments, isn't it? That's not Botox.
Well, it's
that's not paralysing your
But it's still the
muscle,
beauty
top
industry,
bit.
though. But I think we do need regulation. We need to know what we're getting, when we're getting it, and actually the ideal and why we're going for it.
OK, right, we'll move on from there.
We're going to get our makeup done.
We're going to go get a makeup touch-up. We have loads more coming up on today's show, including those marches yesterday. We've got an exclusive with someone that was on the Tommy Robinson march, and be talking to various attendees. But first, let's get the news with Sophia Wensler.
Dawn, thank you. It's 2:34. These are your headlines. The Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, has failed to clarify what Labour mean by working people. Meanwhile, thousands of businesses are closing their doors due to fears about Labour's upcoming budget. The Telegraph newspaper is reporting that more than 1,600 company directors have chosen to wind down their businesses so far this month, the highest number of closures this year and more than double the amount for the whole of last October. It comes as Sir Keir Starmer denied plotting a war against Middle Britain and misleading the public after promising not to raise taxes on working people in the run-up to the general election. Speaking earlier on GB News, Bridget Phillipson avoided questions around whether people running small firms are working people, as she provided further confusion over the party's tax pledges.
Appreciate that it's frustrating that I can't comment on wider measures in the budget, but we haven't got long to wait. The Chancellor will set out everything on Wednesday. What our manifesto was clear about was that we didn't want working people to face higher taxes. We hold to that, and they will not see increases in VAT, in national insurance or in income tax. And coming out of the budget, when they receive their payslip, they will not see higher taxes.
Now, a man has died after a boat carrying migrants deflated in the English Channel this morning. That's according to French authorities. It comes after GB News revealed the number of Channel migrants arriving in the UK so far this year has already overtaken the total for the whole of 2023. The total figure for small boat arrivals over the whole of 2023 was 29,437. People smuggling operations have already resulted in nearly 50 deaths this year. In other news now, a man has been charged with attempted murder after a woman and 2 children suffered stab wounds in what has been described by police as a truly shocking incident. Police were called to Dagenham, where they found the woman in her 30s, an 8-year-old girl and a 2-year-old boy, all suffering from stab wounds. The Met Police said they were taken to hospital and none are in a life-threatening condition. 48-year-old Kulvinder Ram will appear in court on Monday, charged with 3 counts of attempted murder. Police said those involved were all known to each other. And Prince William has extended what is being called an olive branch to Prince Harry by publicly naming him for the first time in 6 years.
My mother took me to the Passage. She took Harry and I both there. I must have been about 11, I think, probably at the time, maybe 10. I'd never been to anything like that before, and I was a bit anxious as to what to expect.
That's part of a new ITV documentary following the Prince of Wales and his first year on his Homewards programme that aims to end homelessness. The film, titled Prince William, We Can End Homelessness, includes poignant, unseen photos of William and Diana at the Passage in Westminster. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Sophie Reaper has more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Wet and windy across the northwest today, but sunnier spells elsewhere before turning cloudier for all of us on Monday. Having a look at the bigger picture then, we've got a ridge of higher pressure extending across the south of the UK, but another frontal system moving in from the northwest, introducing cloud and outbreaks of rain. So a damp end to the weekend across Northern Ireland and parts of northwest Scotland, with cloud increasing further towards the east. But across much of England and Wales, actually a fine afternoon to come with plenty of autumnal sunshine. Feeling a touch cooler than what we saw on Saturday, but higher still, 14-15 degrees, cooler in the breeze and persistent rain towards the north and west. So as we go through the rest of Sunday evening, cloud and rain will continue to push in across much of Scotland. So a damp end to the weekend here. Cloud and outbreaks of rain persisting across Northern Ireland too. Could be quite heavy at times, especially over the hills as it edges into Cumbria. Further across England and Wales, though, cloud will be increasing but staying largely dry towards the south and east. So as we go through the evening and overnight, all this cloud and rain will gradually continue to sink its way south and eastwards, probably staying driest for the longest towards the far southeast, but it is going to be largely cloudy, so that will help keep the temperatures up, so not as cold as the night just gone, lows 13-14 degrees. But that leads to a dull start on Monday and throughout much of the day, really, with a lot of cloud around, outbreaks of rain and drizzle on and off, may be quite persistent at times across parts of Wales, but there may be some glimmers of sunshine just towards the south. And here we may see highs of up to 17 degrees, especially across parts of London. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive?
Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Hope you're having a lovely Sunday afternoon out there. Now, multiple arrests were made in London following a day of protest yesterday. The Met says 3 of the arrests were made at the Uniting the Kingdom demonstration, 1 for being in breach of the Public Order Act and a breach of the peace, and 2 for racially aggravated public order offences. The other 2 arrests were made at the Stand Up to Racism counter-protest. However, one of them was de-arrested after she agreed to provide her details, having initially refused to do so. Now, activist and business owner and regular contributor to GB News, Adam Brooks, was at the protests yesterday and joins us now. Adam, genuinely thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Now, I've seen some of the footage you posted online from the protest yesterday. Tell us what it was like on that march. We've read about stuff. There's loads of stuff on social media. What it was like to actually be there.
Look, Dawn, I decided to take one of my employees with a camera and try and interview some people at both protests because I wanted to get some balance, you know. And we turned up at the anti-fascist or anti-racism march, and we was threatened, we was barred. I had people in my face trying to grab the phone. They were masked up, balaclavaed up, and the police didn't seem to mind that, you know. And I just think, how can we have people with balaclavas on our streets? I mean, you're seeing the video now. It's quite menacing. And all I was asking them was, why are you covering your faces? And no one would tell me. And in my opinion, you do not go to the streets with a balaclava on if you're there to behave. If these were people that were on the other protests, I'm sure something would have been said and these images would have gone all around the world and on the front pages. So we had to leave. The Met told me that for my own safety, it's probably best that I left the anti-fascist march, which is quite ironic. And then I turned up at the Unite the Kingdom march, and really I was met with many elderly people. There were families there, there were people of colour, a lot of singing, there was children there. I managed to sort of interview 4 or 5 different people from that sort of demo or rally, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And it was very good-natured. I didn't see any trouble there. I'm going to upload a video later of one of the organisers that I wanted to speak to, and you know, he does say that they didn't want to see any racism, they didn't want to see anyone putting anyone down. You know, they just wanted a day of sort of to show their feelings. They're not happy with the government, they're not happy with the direction of travel, and especially when they put Keir Starmer's picture and his videos up on the big screens. The boos were deafening, Dawn. Yeah. You know, there was tens of thousands of people here booing the Prime Minister of our country, and that was very eye-opening to me. Very eye-opening. But
Adam, what do you say to the accusations that are being repeated again in some of the newspapers today that the people on the Uniting the Kingdom march, the march you were on, which is the official title for it, or the Tommy Robinson march, as others are calling it, are racist and far right?
Well, look, I spoke to a lot of people on camera and off camera yesterday, and not one person said anything racist to me. I mean, I wouldn't have that anyway. In fact, it was the opposite. They was there just to say, look, we're worried about the way that the country is going, illegal immigration, something I speak about a lot on GB News, and get labelled racist. And, you know, it doesn't help when our Prime Minister calls everyone far right, you know, and labels and puts that on you. So there's a lot of older people that are worried for their grandchildren. You know, they see Our borders are literally open. We don't know who's coming into this country. They're unvetted. We know nothing about them. We've seen some heinous crimes recently from people that are staying in the migrant hotels. And that's not to demonise all of these people. We know that. You know, it's not their fault. It's the system. Our system is broken. And these people should not be allowed to come over in their tens of thousands, unvetted. We know nothing about them. It's putting communities at risk.
Do you feel that many of the people you were speaking to on that march just feel their voices aren't being heard and they just want to get the voices out there? It's not even about Tommy Robinson. It's not about being far right. It is about just getting their voices heard because they don't feel politicians of any political colour are listening to them.
No, that is something that was coming across from everyone I spoke to. You know, they feel like they're ignored, and there's no MPs out there, they're saying, that represent their views in Parliament. So, look, I spoke to people that were black, that were of Asian descent, that were old, young, gay, straight. There were children there. You know, this is not what I would call the far right. I actually asked a lot of people, do you consider yourself far right? And they were horrified at that label. So, you know, it's a very lazy sort of trope to put on those sort of gatherings. And it's a very easy weapon that the left will use to silence anyone that dares speak out. Now, again, I'll go back to those masked up, balaclavaed up people on the anti-fascist march. For me, they're the fascists. Why are they dressed in black? Why are they covering their faces? Why are they trying to stop me talking to people? If they've got legitimate concerns and a legitimate argument, you don't cover your face. You don't threaten. You know, I was barged. It was probably best that I left, you know, but one thing that they didn't like, Dawn, was that I would laugh. I don't think there's many media figures out there that would stick around. I don't get intimidated by this, you know. Under those balaclavas and under those masks will be people that work in our universities, in our NHS, in our schools. That's why they're covering their faces. They know they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. And I think it's very sinister that, one, the police do not deal with them for being balaclavaed up on our streets, and two, the media, the mainstream media, apart from GBNews and a couple of others, do not want to show these balaclavaed people up on our streets. Why, Dawn? You know, they do not represent us as people.
No, they don't. Adam, thank you, genuinely thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, taking time out on a very busy day for you. I know that. I appreciate your time. I'll be getting the thoughts on my panel, Amy and Claire, after this very short break. We'll see you soon.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, Italian wine in Britain is worth a whopping £891 million and can be described as a Prosecco phenomenon, apparently. So joining us now to tell us more about why these Italian bubbles are so popular is Ed Smith, the founder of The Emissary, a British-based Prosecco brand. Good morning, Ed.
Morning, guys.
Thank you for coming in, and you've done just as we asked. You've come laden with booze and bottles and glasses.
Exactly.
So the definition of Prosecco, Tatiana, you were saying earlier, is sparkling wine that's been made in certain areas of Italy. Which areas?
Exactly. So the Prosecco region is northeast Italy. It's about sort of an hour north of Venice. Foothills of Dolomite Mountains. Very, very beautiful part of Italy. Veneto, exactly. Well done.
Show off.
Yeah.
Well, I'm half Italian, so...
well, there we go. OK, you should be teaching me.
No, that's it.
So, yeah, so like Champagne, that has to come from the Champagne region in France. Prosecco has to come from the Prosecco region in Italy. And it's different to Champagne and other sparkling wines, like English sparkling wine, in that geography, like we just mentioned, has to come from that region in Italy. The grapes that are used are different. So Prosecco has to be at least 85% Glera, which is the native grape to the region. And it's most importantly the method. So Champagne and English sparkling wines use the traditional method. where second fermentation, which produces the bubbles, happens in the bottle, whereas Prosecco uses what's called the Charmat method. So the second fermentation happens in steel vats. It's a much quicker process, and that's why Prosecco is a bit more affordable.
So the Emissary is a British-based Prosecco brand.
Yeah.
So is it made in the UK?
No, made in Italy.
Yeah, that's why you can call it Prosecco.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can't call it Prosecco unless it's made in those two regions.
Great. So can we get stuck into some of these? That's the most important
Absolutely.
thing of this morning.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Hope you're having a wonderful Sunday. Thank you for your company. Really appreciate it. Now, just before the break, we heard from Adam Brooks about his experience at the London protest yesterday, the Uniting the Kingdom March, or the Tommy Robinson March, if you want to call it that. I'm still joined by Amy Nicole Turner and Claire Muldoon, and we are now going to talk about what we heard Adam say. We didn't cover the march as much as I think some of us would have liked yesterday. It was a very happening news story. I mean, an estimated 25,000 people were on this march, Amy. What did you make of what Adam had to say about his experiences of being in London yesterday?
I just don't understand why someone, a self-proclaimed freedom fighter, would have such an issue with people choosing to wear balaclavas at their own free will. And I disagree with Adam that he said that if people on the other side were wearing balaclavas, it would have made national newspaper headlines. I don't agree with that, actually, because the march hasn't really made many headlines at all, and there were cases of racially aggravated incidences. So
but if we're talking, I'm not defending anyone here, but statistically, if we're talking 25,000 people on this march, and there were over 25,000 on the Uniting the Kingdom march, Stand Up to Racism, an estimated 20,000 people, that's 45,000 people. If we've got 6-7 arrests on that, I mean, that's statistically a very low offence rate.
It was more the fascination with people wearing balaclavas, but I think he's right that people don't want to wear them because they might be spotted and it might have implications for their job. But where I disagree with Adam is I think, fine, like you can't always be politically active in certain jobs, so of course they're going to need to keep anonymous, and I think that's also all right. It's not a problem to me, people wearing balaclavas, as long as they're in keeping within the law and peacefully protesting.
But surely part of protesting is actually putting yourself there, your identity there, because you're protesting either for your identity or against something that might actually happen. But here's the thing, uniting the kingdom, easy solution, get rid of devolution. Make everyone the same. We should be... The problem with these protests, and I'm not in favour of it, OK? Free speech, everything else, I so am in favour of it. Cancel culture doesn't have... the two words do not, are not in my dictionary. But honestly, this is 2024. Do we really need to be protesting at the drop of a hat, wave flagging, or trying to get our point across? We've actually, through these marches, I think, we've disseminated society as we know it and put an absolute ramrod made of steel right through society. We've divided so much. Can't we just come together? And it's not by protesting that we do this. And wearing a mask to hide your identity in terms of your freedom to protest. Irony? Muchly?
And personally, I find them quite threatening, and they are actually banned in several shopping centres now, people with balaclavas, because I think, well, why are you
I just don't think it's the most pressing issue. If we've
got
thousands of people out on the streets with a problem...
Unfortunately, Claire and Amy, we have to go now. We have run out of time. Thank you very much for your company.
Welcome.
Thank you. More importantly, for your company, don't go too far. Nana's up at 3 o'clock, but first, it's the weather for you.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be wet and windy in the northwest today, brighter elsewhere before turning cloudier for all of us on Monday. Having a look at the bigger picture, we've got a ridge of higher pressure extending across the south of the UK, but the next frontal system coming in from the northwest, affecting much of Northern Ireland and Scotland. So a damp end to the day here with outbreaks of rain. That will gradually sink its way south and eastwards, could turn heavy at times across parts of Cumbria. Towards the far southeast, probably holding on to the driest conditions as we go to start Monday morning. But otherwise, a lot of cloud around. That will help keep the temperatures up, so not quite as chilly out there to start Monday as Sunday morning, lows 10 or 11 degrees. So as we start Monday, well, it is going to be a dull start out there for most of us with outbreaks of rain and drizzle. In any sheltered spots further towards the east, though, we may get away with some brighter spells to start the day across parts of Scotland. Otherwise, a lot of cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle across Northern Ireland, mild here. May be seeing more persistent rain across the hills across Wales, with the southwest seeing some sunshine to start Monday morning. But otherwise, not much changes throughout the day. It is going to be a dull day out there with a lot of cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle on and off. There may be some breaks in the cloud, especially towards eastern areas and towards the far southeast as we go into the afternoon. And here we'll see temperatures rising, perhaps up to 16, possibly 17 degrees. Otherwise, staying up at around 14 or 15 degrees towards the north. So as we go through Monday evening and overnight, again, a very similar picture out there. A lot of cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle, maybe seeing drier conditions towards the far southeast. And then higher pressure dominates Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. But once again, it won't be blue skies. There'll still be a lot of cloud around. Bye-bye.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.